I've really got to tell you, finding a date can be really tough, especially if you're looking to immediately have sex. You see, there are individuals out there right now working hard to find a partner for exactly that purpose. And I know what you're thinking. You're envisioning someone slaving away at their profile on the dark web's equivalent of Match.com, or perhaps swiping vigorously left or right on their phone, but that's not the kind of effort I'm talking about. No, the effort I'm talking about is more like the bowerbird, who spends days magnificently crafting this nuptial nest in order to attract a female, and then decorating it, of course, with these colorful objects. But if that's not enough, some members of this species will always already stand out front all day in an attempt to attract a partner. And then, of course, there's the bird of paradise. The bird of paradise's dating strategy is donning a costume and fanning for attention. And of course, nobody could forget that much maligned beetle who has to gather, shape, smooth, and roll an enormous gift of dung to present to a potential partner in hopes that his is the most impressive offering. All over the world, organisms are going to exceeding lengths to get a little action. Which begs the question, why? Well, fundamentally, it's critical that organisms find a mate. Biology is, after all, just a long series of successful reproductions. But what happens when circumstances change and your tried and true mating playbook's no longer applicable? What happens when context changes and you find yourself on the brink of extinction? Well, to tell this story, it's probably best if we depersonalize it a little bit and choose as a subject to talk about instead something lovable, cuddly, a pocket-sized organism that you just like to snuggle, which is exactly why today we're going to talk about this guy, the small-toothed sawfish. The small-toothed sawfish, don't let its name fool you. It can grow to over 20 feet in length and tip the scales at over 700 pounds. Today, it can be found in the waters off the coast of Florida, but just a few decades ago, it could have been found as far north as New York, all the way down to Uruguay and beyond. You see, since 1965, the small-toothed sawfish has lost a whopping 95% of its population. And estimates now suggest that there are fewer than 500 of these fish in the over 800,000 square miles of its original habitat. This cataclysmic population collapse has earned the small-toothed sawfish a spot on the IUCN's Red List of critically endangered species. In addition to winning that award that nobody wants, this sawfish is also struggling to find a mate. Think about it. You can swim for days and days and never encounter another member of your own species. And if you are so lucky to do that, there's approximately a 50% chance that it's the same sex as you and of absolutely no reproductive value. Talk about a bummer. So in this particular case, in a blink of an eye, this fish has now found itself in a dramatically different context, one where its literal survival is at stake, all because of some external and uncontrollable variables that changed its context. Now, I might be a pessimist or maybe just really, really weak, but I think if I found myself in these circumstances, I would probably wallow in my self-pity and succumb to my eventual extinction. But nature is not that way. Life holds on till the very last moment and invents and repurposes until the very end in an attempt to hang on. And it's this persistence that has allowed life to exist on this planet for over 3 billion years and overcome the devastation of 6 major mass extinctions. Life is, if anything, resilient. And you know what? So too is the small-toothed sawfish. Because instead of swimming around aimlessly and hoping to stumble upon a potential reproductive partner, the females of this species have done something amazing. As this research title so clearly articulates, facultative parthenogenesis in a critically endangered wild vertebrate, females have begun having babies entirely on their own. I know, it's amazing. We don't have time to get into the details, But suffice it to say that these inventive females have figured out a way to take their otherwise discarded genetic material and fertilize their own eggs. They're now getting pregnant without the contribution of anyone. You go, fish girl, right? This could save the species. But it's not just in the sawfish. These parthenogenetic births have been documented in rattlesnakes and lizards, even organisms as common as the turkey. And of course, in these species, it is by far the exception to the rule. But when context changes, this oddity can become a critical lifesaver. So why in the world am I telling you about the importance of finding a mate, or this critically endangered fish, or these amazing virgin births? Because it parallels a challenge that we face every day. You see, we all have things that we want to accomplish and we want to preserve into the future. And we've devised systems and strategies to ensure that that happens. And historically, those systems have worked. But you never know when, in the blink of an eye, something changes, you find yourself in a new context, swimming solo and facing your own potential extinction. And when that happens, we need to take a lesson from nature and learn to overcome adversity, even if it appears life-threatening. And here's a simple way to do that. Start by clearly defining your end goal. What's your objective? What are you after? Write it down if you have to. The fish, they couldn't write it down, but it was clear. They needed to have babies. And then catalog all of the skills and tools and experience you have to bring to bear on the subject. Those are the attributes you have to work with. For the fish, that was a fully functioning female reproductive system. Everything from ovaries to eggs, it was all ready to go, but in this new context, it just wasn't working. So then, you simply have to brainstorm new ways to tweak and twist and apply and adapt those skills that you have to be successful in the new context. Now, that's not easy, and it may not work the first time or even the second, but you can't give up. Because if a 56 million-year-old fish can reinvent its entire system of reproduction, I believe and have confidence that we can reinvent ourselves when context changes. Not just to survive, but to thrive. And if you want to hear more nature-inspired stories, I encourage you to visit naturesays.org. And if you're preparing your own talk or high-stakes presentation, consider partnering with us at the Professional Communicators. Thank you very much.